Nikki takes it to the hilts again at USA Track and Field Indoor Nationals. What's the latest Trump administration edict against trans people? Here's one just in time for LA 2028. And the Battle of Maine. Between all the threats, what's really going on? Hello again, everybody. This is Transposition Sports. I'm Kahrl Chardonnay Webb. The Nikki Hiltz hot streak continued at USA Track and Field's Indoor National Championships this past weekend. The USATF's first non-binary champ was seeking a fifth straight title at 1,500 meters, and they added a new goal, a 1,500 3,000 double that hasn't been seen in 5 years. Saturday, women's 3,000 meters, and the story early on was Shelby Houlihan. She's writing her story, leading the race, seeking redemption after a 4-year PED suspension. But Hiltz is the tactician, and they worked their plan brilliantly in the last 2 laps. And look what developed. Another national championship for Nikki Hiltz, but Houlihan did get a piece of redemption. She finished second. Now, on to Sunday. 1,500 meter final, and the 4-time champ was in the middle of the chess game. Now we know how much Hiltz has worked on their strength and speed to deal with those NASCAR type high speed 1,500, but this was a tactical race, and Hiltz showed they can bring the goods in a tactical race, and they did it again. Check it out, Nikki Hiltz, Kickalicious, on the way to their 5th straight national title in the event. Now, let's take a look at the Hiltz litany over these last few years. 2023, swept the 1,500 meter titles both indoor and outdoor and added the Road 1 Mile Championship. In 2024, repeated as Road 1 Mile champion, swept the 1,500 again, qualified for their first Olympics, finished 7th in Paris. And now, the first 1,500 3,000 double since 2020. The last person to do it was Shelby Houlihan. Now, Hiltz did earn a place at the upcoming World Indoor Championships in China, but they're going to skip the Worlds because they've signed on to the Michael Johnson Grand Slam Track Tour. The opener, also the opener of their outdoor season, will be in Kingston, Jamaica, April 15th. Hiltz is also racing with an eye towards the Summer Olympics in LA in 2028, but the U.S. State Department policy might keep other non-binary and trans athletes on the outside looking in. According to a report in The Guardian Tuesday, the United States State Department has ordered officials worldwide to deny visas to transgender athletes attempting to come to the U.S. for sports competitions and to issue permanent visa bans against those who are deemed to, quote, misrepresent their birth sex on visa applications. A State Department memo written by Secretary of State Marco Rubio says that the permanent fraud bar statute of the Naturality and Immigration Act will be applied, quote, in cases where applicants are suspected of misrepresenting their purpose of travel or sex. You should consider whether this misrepresentation is material such that it supports an ineligibility finding. Yet again, we're seeing how the Trump administration seeks to have another go at transgender people. But here's the thing, Secretary of State Rubio. You only had 2 transgender athletes total at the Olympics and Paralympics in Paris last year. At this point, you only have 1 who says they're openly looking at competing at LA in 2028. And that's Italian Paralympic track star Valentina Petrillo, who hasn't ruled out taking another shot at the Paralympics. And she had some choice words recently for President Trump. On February 6th, she commented on Trump's sports executive order to the Italian news agency ANSA. She said, quote, Donald Trump talks about things he doesn't know. An athlete's performance is not based on testosterone. Luckily, he doesn't decide. The federations and the IOC decide. However, there's a little flaw in that ointment, Ms. Petrillo. The next IOC president will be in the decision, and 2 of the leading candidates, a reminder, the election coming up in March, include World Athletic President Sebastian Coe and Union Cycliste Internationale's head David Lapontier. Both have initiated and passed policies against trans women competing in their respective sports. Also consider that Trump believes that boxer Amani Khalif of Algeria and Yulin Ting of Taiwan, both cisgender women who won gold medals in Paris last year, are trans. What you have is a situation that doesn't bode well for trans people who play sports or trans people who just want to come to the United States. And that's what many analysts feel this ruling is really about. When we return to Transposition Sports, we're going to look at a situation in Maine where a high school kid wins a state championship, a governor and a president come to verbal blows over it, and there's a broadcasting company in the middle of it all. That and more to come. This is Transposition Sports.
Transposition Sports has been brought to you by a sleeping cat. Carly, I'm asleep. Get that out of my face. Now a message from the angry gay grandpa. Get the Kleenex out.
So maybe I'll start a little bit softer.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine.
Dad?
Before you say anything, I just want to apologize for what I said this morning. I've been doing a lot of thinking. If you want to change your name, if you want to wear a dress.
It's a skirt, Dad.
Skirt. I don't know the kind of support you need, but let's get you some for all this transgender stuff.
Wait. Are you serious? Dad, what is this?
Oh, this is me supporting you. This is me saying I love you. This is me not losing you.
I love you, Dad.
Love you. Holly.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
Welcome back to Transposition Sports. I'm Carly Chardonnay-Webb, and we're going to take a deeper look into the situation brewing in Maine. 2 weeks ago, Maine's high school indoor track and field championships, Class B pole vault. There's a kid who won from Greeley High School, and she is a transgender girl. Keeping with our editorial policies here, we're not going to name her, but this girl was outed by a person named Laurel Libby, also known as State Representative Laurel Libby. Oh, by the way, what party does she belong to? Who else? She's a Republican.
Transphobia for a stronger America.
Well, it seems that Representative Libby really had a lot to say about all this. Let's take a look.
Boys participating in girls' sports is not fair. And when the woke left can't silence women, they cancel them.
A fierce debate in the Maine legislature as a lawmaker is disciplined for a viral social media post.
What was the decision to post the photos of them? Why did you make that decision?
Yeah, that individual is participating in a public event, a public sport. There are photos online. This is not new. And when you choose to participate in something that is as public as this, it's not surprising. The citizens in my district are having their voices silenced as well. And this is a huge infringement on my First Amendment right of free speech.
This is not the new standard that any kid, any Maine kid, could be posted on Facebook or anywhere as part of a political attack.
I asked Libby how she would feel if she was the parent in this situation.
I would never allow my son to participate in girls' sports. It is unfair, and Maine people know that. And so I can't imagine a scenario where a photo of my child would be posted as participating in a sport with the opposite gender, competing as that gender.
Of course, backing people like Representative Libby or the other anti-trans advocates like the Karens Against Women's Sports, who have all been coming at this kid. And that extends all the way to a special friend of the Karens who's in the White House now. And that led to a moment last Friday between President Trump and Democratic Maine Governor Janet Mills.
The NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, not here. Are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good, I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
The governor stood her ground, and in response, the Department of Justice is now investigating Maine's Department of Education and the University of Maine, even though the Black Bears don't have a single transgender athlete on any of their athletic teams. Since then, there's been a lot of questions in regard to what the president can and cannot do. One television station in Maine talked to a constitutional law expert, and here's what he had to say about that.
Well, when President Trump said it would be fairly easy, he's right. It'll be fairly easy against him. Look, Congress allocates these monies to be spent, and the president, under the Constitution, must faithfully execute the laws, must take care to faithfully execute the laws, the laws that Congress has passed and Congress has appropriated money for. And he can't just decide, because he wants to make a point with the governor of Maine on transgender athletes, to not give money to Maine that's been allocated by Congress. It's a pretty simple legal question. There's also a congressional act, the Congressional Budget and Empowerment Act of 1974, in response to when Richard Nixon tried to do a much smaller scale thing. And the law is very clear. No, the president cannot just impound money and decide not to spend it. He's got to report to Congress, and Congress can tell him if that's appropriate or not.
That same station also talked to the head of the Maine Principals Association. Now, they're the group that administers high school sports and activities in the state. Here's what he had to say.
The Maine Human Rights Act is the Maine Human Rights Act, and we, the people, passed a law that protected people based on gender discrimination. We, the people, passed that in 2005. So this is something absolutely that's in law, and the legislature passed laws that we, the people, put them there to protect transgender students, to make sure that they have the resources they need and they're not discriminated against. So the Maine Principals Association is merely looking at those, like all associations do, looking at state law and saying, okay, we want to make sure that we comply with state law. And this is what they put in place. And nobody challenged that. And nobody said, no court told them that they shouldn't do that anymore. So let's be clear. I disagree with you also. I think the legislature is strongly in support of transgender non-discrimination, of all students being able to participate in the sports that are associated with their gender. So I don't think that there would be bipartisan support to overturn this. And Donald Trump is just trying to force the state to do something that our elected representatives have said, no, we won't do.
Now, in the middle of all this noise, there's been some other interesting things that have happened in the way that this has been covered. By the way, just a note to news outlets in Maine, because it looks like this is going to be a thing up there. News reporters, when you're doing interviews about this topic, please, please, please don't do this.
Libby is joining a national conversation surrounding transgender women and girls who are biological males participating in girls' and women's sports.
Really? Biological males? Really? You know the Associated Press style book frowns upon this. GLAAD frowns upon this. The Trans Journalists Association frowns upon this. But I know there's at least one media group who's going to ignore this no matter what we tell them. In this case, that's a station with the call letters WGME, also known as News 13 Maine. They're a CBS affiliate and they cover a lot of the state. And this particular station did the story on what happened at the Maine State Indoor Track Meet. And they interviewed a kid who was in a different event talking about how a teammate was beaten by the kid who won the pole vault. Take a look and notice how familiar this sounds.
My teammate came over to me and told me that she was going to have to compete against a biological male.
Zoe Hutchins competed in Maine's Class B indoor track and field state championship on Monday. She says her teammate had to compete against a transgender athlete.
My friend who had to directly compete against him kept saying was that it's not fair. And she's totally right. It's not fair. And it should never have happened.
If nothing else, the teenage girl who gave this interview sounded like she was having a screen test to be a part of a future Alliance Defending Freedom lawsuit. But what if I were to tell you that this same interview and story ran in stations in almost 100 markets? Well, it did, and it's by design, because the company who owns WGME does transphobia with flair, and their name is Sinclair. Yes, Sinclair Broadcasting owns News 13 Maine. And Sinclair is well known for having a right-wing slant and, well, everything when it comes to their local news properties. By the way, if you want to know more about Sinclair, John Oliver from Last Week Tonight did an excellent deep dive on this company a few years ago on his show. I'll link you to it. It'll be in the comments. And it's only getting worse. Fox News tried to make a big to-do of the fact that because of the threats against this kid just for winning a championship that they were eligible to win, police had to be present to provide additional security at Greeley High School. And Fox is making it sound like, oh, it's the trans kid's fault. This is America in 2025. From the looks of things, this is going to become more of an issue, and not just in Maine, especially since states such as California, Minnesota, Oregon, and Washington State have stated publicly they're going to ignore President Trump's executive order. They're going to allow transgender student athletes to play sports for their school in concordance with their state human rights laws. And the bulk of those athletes are going to be playing in the upcoming spring sports season. And I shudder to think what the temperature is going to be in Oregon and Washington, because in both of those states, with outdoor track seasons coming, each has a transgender girl who's defending a state track title this season. There are Sinclair stations in both those states and in a number of markets across this country, and they're going to spew the same nonsense. So will Karens against women's sports. So will the administration, and so will the Department of Education, just like they did under Betsy DeVos, someone who is just as hopeless and incompetent as the current Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, is. They're going to attack these kids. They're going to attack these schools, and they're going to attack affirming parents, because all this is a part of a dedicated PR strategy. Let's understand this. This is by design. But I will say this. Good on you, Governor Mills, for standing up and being counted. When I think of the actions of all these professional transphobes and the politicians who back them up, I think of Joseph Welch. He was the attorney who said those famous words to Joseph McCarthy in 1954. Have you no decency? It's pretty safe to say that the professional transphobes out in the world and in the White House and in the press rooms of their mouthpieces have none. And they're making somebody's child the target. Hashtag just saying. But on the upside, there are people in the fourth estate who are doing it right. And I want to end by giving one of them a big bouquet of flowers. Christina Kahrl, executive sports editor of the San Francisco Chronicle, and her team, who did a lot of fine reporting during the San Jose State volleyball situation last fall. Her team that covered the story are finalists for the Associated Press Sports Editor Awards for investigative sports journalism. That team included reporters Marisa Igemi, Ann Killian, Aaron Alday, Bob Agelko, and a whole host of editors, photographers, and videographers. This is what Christina Kahrl said on her social media today. Quote, "It was an award won in the face of massive misrepresentations and misinformation amplified by outlets ranging from the New York Times, Fox Sports, and more, coming from a major political party and presidential candidate. Journalism, like history, is rooted in a basic commitment to reporting the truth. In times such as these, I cannot be more proud of the people ready to stand by the commitment of their craft, to do right by their readers, their communities, and their fellow Americans." Just another feather in a cap who's long been a role model to me and many others. And she's perhaps the highest ranking transgender person in American journalism. Christina, Kahrl, and team at the Chronicle, take a bow. You've earned it. For Transposition Sports, I'm Carly Chardonnay Webb.